The first time I saw my husband's name in a murder report, his coffee was still warm on our kitchen counter. Not cold. Not left there from yesterday. Warm. Like Caleb had only stepped out for a minute. Like the man listed as the last person to contact a murder victim might still walk back through our front door, kiss my cheek, and ask why I was touching things that were never meant for me to find. The mug was the blue one with the chipped handle. His favorite. Caleb always said it fit his hand better than the expensive mugs we got for our wedding, which was his usual trick, making cheap sound sentimental. I stood there barefoot, still in my robe, with rain tapping against the kitchen windows and Detective Owen Price standing across from me like bad news had learned how to wear a gray coat. He had knocked at 7:18 that morning. I remember the time because I looked at the microwave clock while opening the door, still trying to decide whether my husband was careless, rude, or dead. I had not yet added possibly connected to a homicide to the list. "Mrs. Ellison," Detective Price said, "when was the last time you saw your husband?" I looked down at the file he had placed on my counter. Homicide Review, Derek Walsh. Under it, printed in plain black type, last known contact, Caleb Ellison. My mouth went dry. I work in insurance analysis. Suspicious paperwork is not new to me. Fraud claims, injury disputes, fire reports that smell more like debt than gasoline. I know how people hide ugly things inside clean sentences. I can usually spot a lie before the second paragraph. Apparently, none of that training prepares you for finding your husband's name in a murder report while his coffee is still steaming beside the toaster. "Last night," I said. My voice came out too small. Detective Price wrote something down. "What time?" "Around 9:30. We had dinner near the Riverwalk, our anniversary." "Where?" "Alba, the Italian place." I almost added that the waiter described the potatoes like they had graduated from a private college, but I stopped myself. Detectives probably did not need menu commentary. Caleb and I had been married 6 years. 6 years. 2 apartments, 1 condo, 3 dead houseplants, 4 Thanksgiving arguments about his mother, and enough ordinary mornings to convince me I knew the man who left socks on my side of the bed. The night before, he had sat across from me under soft gold light, turning his wedding ring around his finger. I noticed it. Of course I noticed it. Noticing things is my talent, and lately, my punishment. "Are you okay?" I asked him. He smiled too quickly. "Long day?" "You've had a lot of those." "I know." His phone buzzed against the table. He flipped it over, screen down. That should have bothered me more. Instead, I told myself grown men have work stress. They get quiet. They check phones. They stare out windows. Women do this sometimes. We take warning signs, sand down the edges, and call them habits, because the alternative is admitting the room is already on fire. Near dessert, Caleb pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. "If there's a puppy in there," I said, "we need to talk about air holes." He laughed. For 1 second, he was just my husband again. Inside the box was a thin gold necklace with a tiny oval pendant. Simple, pretty. The kind of gift Caleb called timeless when he wanted credit for not buying anything dramatic. "It's beautiful," I said. He looked relieved. Too relieved. Then he said, "No matter what you hear, remember who I was with you." I stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It means I love you. That is not how normal people say that." He reached across the table and took my hand. His palm was damp. "Just promise me, Mara." I should have pushed harder. I should have asked why he kept watching the front windows. I should have asked why his wine sat untouched. Caleb liked red wine the way some men like arguing about grills. Him leaving a full glass alone was not nothing. But I squeezed his hand and said, "You're being extremely dramatic for a man who once called a smoke alarm needy." He laughed again. This time, it did not reach his eyes. After dinner, outside in the damp October air, he kissed my forehead. "I have to swing by the office," he said. "Tonight? Client issue, 20 minutes. On our anniversary? I'll make it up to you. You're buying breakfast? Done." "Not that healthy place with the angry muffins," he smiled. "Pancakes? Full apology pancakes? Full apology pancakes." Then he got into his black Audi and drove away. That was the last time I saw him. At midnight I called. Voicemail. At 1, I stood at our bedroom window and watched rain slide down the glass, telling myself not to become the kind of woman who turns one late husband into a true crime spiral. At 3, I called 2 hospitals. At 4:10, I sat on the bathroom floor because apparently panic prefers tile. At 6:55, I found his wedding ring in the ceramic dish beside the sink. Caleb never left without it. Never. At 7:18, Detective Price knocked. And now he was in my kitchen asking about a dead man named Derek Walsh. "Who is Derek?" I asked. Price watched me carefully. "You don't know him?" "No." "Your husband never mentioned Milwaukee?" "No. Caleb never lived in Milwaukee." Detective Price did not answer right away. That silence had teeth. He slid a photograph from the file. A younger Caleb stood outside a bar beside a man I had never seen before. Caleb had one arm around him, smiling like a person who believed the past would stay where he left it. On the back, someone had written, "Caleb plus Derek, 2015. I stared until the edges of the photo blurred. My husband told me he was in St. Louis in 2015. Detective Price's face stayed controlled, but something shifted behind his eyes. "Mrs. Ellison, is there anywhere in your home Caleb kept private documents? Devices? Storage keys? Anything he would not usually want handled?" I almost said no. Then I looked toward the hallway. Caleb's office door was closed. Locked. He never locked that door. Not from me. Detective Price followed my eyes. "What is it?" "My husband's office," I said. "It was locked this morning." The blue mug sat between us, quiet now. The coffee had stopped steaming. Somehow that felt like another body going cold. Detective Price did not break down the office door. I will admit something ugly. I was disappointed. Some small, unhelpful part of me had expected police work to involve more dramatic damage. A shoulder to the wood, a splintered frame. Someone saying, "Stand back, ma'am," like my kitchen had suddenly become an episode of something with better lighting. Instead, Detective Price asked if I had a key. Very reasonable. Very anticlimactic. So I searched the kitchen drawers while he waited, calm and professional, and I moved like a raccoon with a mortgage. Junk drawer, no key. Mail drawer, no key. Drawer with batteries, tape, takeout menus, and one mysterious screw that had survived 3 moves and somehow earned citizenship, still no key. "Caleb kept a spare in his desk," I said. Then I heard myself. His desk was inside the locked office. Beautiful. Marriage, apparently, is just 2 people building problems together and pretending they are systems. Price called a uniformed officer from downstairs. They got the door open without splintering anything, which felt rude. If my life was falling apart, the door could have at least shown support. Caleb's office looked normal at first. Too normal. Books lined the shelves. A framed photo from our Seattle trip sat beside his monitor. His chair was pushed in. His reading glasses were folded neatly by the keyboard. The room smelled faintly like cedar, printer ink, and the version of my husband I still wanted to believe in. That annoyed me most. The room still trusted him. Then I saw the empty space beside the lamp. His old external hard drive was gone. I knew it immediately. It had sat there for years, black and dusty and useless looking. Caleb once called it the graveyard of bad decisions. I thought he meant old tax files, college photos, maybe music from the phase where he insisted vinyl sounded better, but still listened through cheap speakers. Apparently my imagination had been underperforming. Detective Price photographed the desk. "Anything missing?" he asked. "The hard drive." "What was on it?" "I don't know." He wrote that down. I hated how often that was becoming my answer. I don't know. 3 words I had never associated with my marriage until that morning. His laptop was still there. Price asked permission to take it. I said yes before the wife in me could argue. My analyst brain had arrived late, exhausted, probably wearing mismatched shoes, but at least it was finally in the room. Then I noticed the scratch. A fresh pale line on the hardwood near the lower bookcase. I stepped closer. Something was moved. Price looked up. "Which shelf?" "That one." I pointed. "It's usually flush against the wall." He came over, studied the gap, then called the officer. Together, they pulled the bookcase forward. Something dropped. A hotel keycard slid across the floor and stopped near my bare foot. Old, cream-colored, faded gold letters. The Whitmore Hotel. Milwaukee. I bent automatically, but Price stopped me. "Let me." "Right? Evidence." My life had become evidence before I had even brushed my teeth. The officer bagged it. I stared at the name. Caleb never mentioned this hotel. Price's jaw tightened just enough for me to notice. "I know it." "How?" "It closed 6 years ago." The room went quiet. So quiet I could hear the refrigerator in the kitchen hum through the wall. doing its small useless job like nothing had happened. I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, because my body had reached that unpleasant point where panic and absurdity had started carpooling. So, I said, my husband kept an old hotel key behind a bookcase for sentimental reasons? Price looked at me. I don't think this is sentimental. No, sorry, sarcasm is unfortunately my emergency contact. He did not smile. But his eyes softened. That made me want to cry, which irritated me. I do not enjoy being emotionally disarmed by law enforcement before breakfast. Price took my statement. He asked about Caleb's work, friends, recent stress, strange calls, unexplained trips, new habits. I answered what I could. Caleb worked in risk consulting for real estate firms. He traveled sometimes. He hated mushrooms with the passion of a man personally wronged by fungi. He called his mother every Sunday. 3 months ago, he had started running again, badly, in expensive shoes and with the knees of a man negotiating with gravity. Had he seemed afraid? At dinner, yes. Before that, maybe. The problem with fear is that it wears other clothes. Stress, fatigue, silence, long showers, new passwords. When did he change his laptop password? Price asked. I looked at him. I didn't know he had. That landed harder than it should have. Caleb had not just disappeared. He had built small locked rooms inside our life, and I had been walking past them every day, calling them privacy. After Price left, the condo felt too large. Not empty. Accusing. The appliances hummed. The windows clicked softly in the rain. Somewhere down the hall, Caleb's office remained open, but it did not feel open. It felt violated. Exposed. Like a mouth that had finally been forced to speak and still refused to tell the whole truth. I showered because grief may be allowed to smell bad, but I draw the line at police interview hair. Then I put on jeans and one of Caleb's old Northwestern sweatshirts. Immediately hated myself, pulled it off, put it back on, then stood there holding the hem like the sweatshirt had personally committed perjury. My phone rang. Caleb's mother. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, she texted. Mara, Caleb missed our morning call. Is everything okay? I stared at the message. 6 years of marriage and I had never once practiced telling a mother her son was missing. There should be a class for that, preferably with snacks, tissues, and a chair sturdy enough for emotional collapse. Before I could answer, another text came in. Unknown number. Do not give Price anything from the office. My skin went cold. I looked toward the hallway. The office door was open now. Empty. Too quiet. The phone buzzed again. You don't know what Caleb protected you from. My fingers shook as I typed. Who is this? 3 dots appeared. Then vanished. Then appeared again. I stood there holding Caleb's phone-sized ghost in my hand, wearing his sweatshirt and suddenly hating the smell of him in the fabric. One final message arrived. Ask him about Maribel. The name meant nothing, and by then, I had learned that the names I did not know were always the ones waiting with knives. I called Detective Price so fast I nearly dropped the phone into the sink. That would have been humiliating, but honestly, my dignity had not been performing at a high level that morning. He answered on the second ring. Price. I got a text. His voice changed immediately. From Caleb? No, unknown number. It said not to give you anything from the office. Silence. I looked down at the message again, as if reading it one more time would make it less insane. It also said, ask him about Maribel. Price did not respond. I closed my eyes. That was quickly becoming my least favorite thing about him. Detective Owen Price had the kind of silence that made you feel like furniture was about to catch fire. Detective? I'm coming back. No, I said. Absolutely not. Don't say something terrifying and then become traffic. Who is Maribel? I need you not to delete anything. I analyze insurance fraud for a living. I know not to delete evidence. Good, but I also know when someone avoids a question. He exhaled. I don't know for sure who Maribel is, but the name came up in connection with the old fire. The fire that killed Derek Walsh? Yes. I sat down at the kitchen island because my knees had quietly resigned from service. Was there another victim? I said I don't know for sure. That sounds like detective for yes, but paperwork hates admitting it. Mara, he said. It was the first time he used my first name. Somehow that scared me more than Mrs. Ellison. Send me screenshots, he said. Then call someone you trust. Do not stay alone. That was how I ended up calling Tessa Monroe. Tessa had been my best friend since college, mostly because she once found me crying over a statistics exam and said, "This is ugly, but salvageable." That was Tessa as a person, brutally useful, occasionally comforting by accident. She worked in digital forensics for a private security firm and had the social warmth of a locked filing cabinet, which I found deeply reassuring. 20 minutes later, she came through my front door carrying a laptop bag, convenience store coffee, and pepper spray. "Where is he?" she asked. "Missing." Rude. "That's your opening?" "I'm establishing tone." She looked me up and down. "You look terrible." "Thank you." I was aiming for widow adjacent, legally uncertain. Then she hugged me. Hard. For 3 seconds, I let myself fold into her shoulder. Only 3. Any longer, and I was afraid I would become something wet and useless on the floor. Tessa pulled back first. "Show me the texts." I handed her my phone. She took screenshots, checked the sender information, and made a face. Burner. Routed. Not impossible to trace, but annoying. Everything is annoying. True, but this is professionally annoying. She asked if Caleb had a second phone. I said no. Too fast. Then I remembered the gym bag. 3 months ago, Caleb had started running. Or more accurately, buying running equipment. Expensive shoes, compression socks, one of those watches that turns normal people into mileage missionaries. His black gym bag lived in the hall closet, usually zipped and smelling faintly like laundry detergent and male ambition. Tessa opened it with gloves she pulled from her bag because apparently she travels like a crime scene fairy. Shoes, towel, old protein bar, a second phone, small, cheap, Android wrapped in a gray sock. I stared at it. My brain took a second to catch up, like it had slipped on ice. Tessa held it up. "That is not athletic equipment." I almost laughed. It came out wrong. The phone was dead. Tessa plugged it into a portable battery and set it on the counter. While it charged, I tried to make coffee I did not want and forgot to put grounds in the machine. Hot water dripped into the empty pot, clear and useless. Tessa glanced over. "Strong brew." "Shut up." The phone powered on. Passcode, of course. Tessa asked for Caleb's usual numbers. Birthday, our anniversary, his mother's birthday. None worked. Then I remembered the necklace. The tiny oval pendant Caleb had given me at dinner. There was engraving on the back, ME 10.14. Our anniversary. Except he had given it to me on October 14. He already knew the date. Why engrave something obvious unless the date mattered less than the habit of hiding things in plain sight? Tessa tried 10/14. Wrong. She tried 2015. Wrong. Then she tried 9/15. The phone unlocked. I went cold. "What is September 15th? Tessa did not answer. Not because she was being cruel, because the phone had finally opened, and whatever lived inside it mattered more than my question. There was almost nothing on it. A few call logs, no saved contacts, one encrypted messaging app, deleted messages cached in broken fragments. Tessa connected the phone to her laptop and ran a recovery tool. Lines of damaged text appeared. Most were useless. Then one rebuilt itself halfway. She found the report. I leaned closer. "Who is she?" Tessa kept scrolling. Another fragment appeared. "Elena is scared." Then another. "If Mara signs, she's exposed too." For a second my body forgot how to be warm. "What does that mean?" I asked. Tessa looked at me. "Have you signed anything recently?" "No." Then I stopped. 3 weeks ago Caleb had made dinner. Pasta with too much garlic because when Caleb cooked, the kitchen smelled like he was trying to ward off vampires and accountability. He handed me his tablet after dinner and said he needed my signature on updated condo insurance documents and a consulting liability policy. "Routine," he said. "Just housekeeping." He stood behind me while I signed, one hand resting lightly on my shoulder. I could still feel it. My own stupidity had a temperature. "Oh God," I whispered. Tessa's face sharpened. "What did you sign?" "I don't know." The words tasted like shame. I read contracts for strangers. I questioned forms for people I had never met. But for my husband, I had signed because the pasta was getting cold and he kissed the top of my head. The phone buzzed in Tessa's hand. A new message. Same encrypted app. "Where's the hard drive?" Tessa and I looked at each other. My mouth went dry. I whispered, "We don't have it." The reply came almost instantly. "Then Caleb is already dead." Tessa wanted to call Detective Price immediately. I wanted to vomit. We compromised, which meant she called him while I stood over the kitchen sink and breathed like I had accidentally enrolled in a prenatal class for criminals. To be clear, I was not pregnant. Just catastrophically married. Price told us to stay inside the condo. Tessa told him that was adorable, then asked how long it would take before the people threatening me realized I did not have Caleb's hard drive and decided to come look for it themselves. He did not enjoy that question. Neither did I. While we waited, Tessa kept working on the cheap phone. She could not fully break into the encrypted app, but she recovered enough fragments to make my life worse, which was apparently the phone's main function. Elena has copies. Whitmore, room 312. Ruth won't stay quiet. Maribel wasn't supposed to be there. I wrote the names on a yellow legal pad because my brain needed somewhere to put them besides my chest. Elena, Ruth, Maribel, Derek, Caleb, a dead man, a missing husband, 2 women I had never met, and me, barefoot at a kitchen island, taking notes like the world's least qualified detective. Price arrived with another officer just before noon. His coat was damp again, and for one stupid second I wondered if Chicago had assigned Rain to follow him personally. He read the recovered messages, his jaw tight. "Do you know Elena?" he asked. "No." "Ruth?" "No." "Maribel?" "No. I'm starting to feel socially excluded from my husband's crimes." Tessa made a small sound beside me. Approval, probably. Price looked back at the phone. Elena Voss was a journalist in Milwaukee. Was? She left reporting several years ago. Why? She investigated Derek Walsh's death. The name sat there between us. Derek. Again. And Caleb knew her? I asked. Price looked at the phone before answering. I believe so. There it was. The kind of careful answer that means yes, but someone somewhere once warned him about lawsuits. I should have been jealous. A small bitter part of me was. Not the largest part. The largest part was busy wondering if my own signature had been quietly attached to a crime. Still, jealousy is petty and athletic. It gets through narrow spaces. Elena was his girlfriend? I asked. Price did not answer. Tessa did. Probably. I turned to her. What? She said. You wanted honesty. I'm unpleasant, not useless. Price continued before I could decide whether to thank her or throw a dish towel. The Whitmore Hotel closed 6 years ago, but the building is still standing near downtown Milwaukee. Room 312 came up in Elena's old investigation. A source met her there 2 weeks before Derek Walsh died. Derek was the source? No, someone who said Derek and a group of investors were planning an insurance fraud scheme. My throat tightened. Insurance. Of course. The one language I actually knew, and somehow my husband had used it to make me blind. What kind of scheme? I asked. A vacant house, planned fire, development payout. The details are still incomplete. I stared at him. Caleb works risk consulting for real estate developers. Yes. The kitchen light above us flickered. Nobody moved. Finally I looked up and said, that bulb has been threatening us for months, really committed to timing. No one laughed. Fair. Price took the cheap phone as evidence. I wanted to argue. It felt like handing over the only dirty thread still tied to Caleb. But Tessa touched my elbow. Let them process it, she said quietly. After Price left, the condo felt charged. Not empty like before. Worse, alert, like every wall had overheard too much and was waiting for someone to make the next mistake. I opened our shared cloud folder and searched for the documents Caleb had asked me to sign 3 weeks earlier. They were labeled harmlessly. Updated household coverage. Routine condo addendum. Consulting entity spouse acknowledgement. The last one made Tessa curse in a way that was both elegant and educational. What? I asked. She opened the file. It was a liability acknowledgement tied to one of Caleb's consulting entities. My name appeared as spouse, shared asset holder, and authorized signer for financial disclosures. My signature sat at the bottom. Neat. Blue. Obedient. I stared at it until my eyes burned. I didn't know what this was, I said. I believe you. That should have helped. It did not. The language on the page was familiar to me. Prior claims, risk exposure, indemnity, disclosure responsibility. Words I understood professionally. Words I would have questioned immediately if a client had sent them across my desk. But for myself, I had signed while Caleb stirred pasta. Too much garlic. One hand on my shoulder, his voice soft behind me saying, just routine. I sat down. I read contracts for a living. Tessa's face softened, which was rare enough to make the room feel briefly unstable. You trusted your husband. I trusted a man who hid a murder report inside my marriage. You didn't know. That is becoming a weak brand for me. She closed the laptop slowly. We need Elena. I looked up. I thought you wanted me to stay put. I did. Before your name showed up in liability paperwork. So we drove to Milwaukee that afternoon in Tessa's Subaru because my hands were shaking too badly, and because Tessa drove like Lanes had personally insulted her family. Chicago blurred behind us. The rain followed us north, tapping nervous fingers against the windshield. Halfway there, my phone rang. Unknown. Tessa glanced over. Do not answer, I answered, because apparently I was tired of being protected by silence. A woman's voice came through. Mara Ellison? My hand tightened around the phone. Who is this? A pause. Elena Voss. Tessa's eyes snapped to me. I put the call on speaker. Elena was breathing unevenly, like she was walking fast or trying not to panic. Do not trust Owen Price, she said. My stomach dropped. He's the detective. I know what he is. What do you want? I want Caleb's hard drive. I don't have it. Then you need to find it before they do. Who are they? Another pause. Longer this time. Then Elena said, the people who killed Derek Walsh. The line went dead. Tessa stared at the road, both hands tight on the wheel. Well, she said, Milwaukee sounds charming. The Whitmore Hotel looked like a place where secrets went after they died badly. It sat on a corner in downtown Milwaukee, its lower windows boarded, its brick darkened by years of lake weather and neglect. The sign still hung above the entrance, but half the letters were missing, so it read, Why more? Not a hotel anymore. More like a threat with poor spelling. Tessa parked across the street and turned off the engine. We are not going in, she said. We drove 90 miles. We drove 90 miles to look. Looking is legal. Breaking into abandoned buildings is how women in documentaries get described as vibrant. I hated that she had a point. I called Detective Price and told him about Elena's warning. He went quiet. Of course he did. By then, his silences had become a whole second language, and I was starting to resent my fluency. You need to come to the Milwaukee precinct, he said. Not the hotel? No. Why? Because Elena Voss is not stable. There it was. A familiar male sentence. Not stable, not reliable, not safe. A neat little label men use when a woman knows too much and refuses to sound grateful for being dismissed. I looked at Tessa. She mouthed, No. I said into the phone, I'll call you back. Then I hung up on a detective, which I do not recommend unless your life has already become paperwork soup and your survival instincts are being managed by spite. Tessa stared at me. You are developing terrible habits. I know. I'm proud and concerned. We waited. If Elena wanted Caleb's hard drive, maybe she would come to the hotel. Or send someone. Or maybe I was building criminal logic out of panic fumes and half a granola bar. Hard to tell. My blood sugar and common sense had both left the room hours ago. An hour passed. Then a woman in a dark green coat appeared at the corner. She crossed fast, head down, one hand tucked inside her coat pocket. Early 30s, maybe mid-30s. Dark hair pulled into a tight knot. No makeup except red lipstick that looked less glamorous than defensive. Elena Voss. I knew it before she looked up. Tessa whispered, Do not get out. I got out. Tessa cursed and followed, because friendship is mostly loyalty with better insults. Elena saw me and stopped. You shouldn't be here, she said. You called me. I told you to find the hard drive. You also told me not to trust Price. Both can be true. She glanced up and down the street. Her face was pale but not fragile. That was the first thing I noticed. She did not look like a woman falling apart. She looked like a woman who had spent years refusing to be surprised and had finally gotten tired. I said, Did you know my husband? Her mouth tightened. Yes. Did you love him? Tessa muttered, Efficient. Elena looked at me. Once. There it was. The word did not cut me the way I expected. Maybe because there were larger knives on the table. When? I asked. Before you. How convenient. I'm not asking you to like me. Good. I was worried the schedule was getting crowded. Elena almost smiled. Almost. Then she led us around the side of the building to a narrow alley where dead leaves and cigarette butts gathered in the cracks. The air smelled like wet brick, old trash, and lake wind. She pulled a small envelope from inside her coat. Inside were a flash drive and a folded photograph. The photo showed Caleb, younger, standing beside Derek Walsh and 3 other men outside a worn-down house. One man wore a police jacket. Another wore an expensive suit and the calm face of someone who had never believed consequences were personal. I pointed to the suited man. Who is he? Graham Lyle, Elena said. Developer. He owned half the vacant properties in that neighborhood through shell companies. The cop? Martin Rusk, retired now. And Derek? Construction contractor. He handled the work no one wanted recorded. I looked at Caleb in the photo. He was smiling. Not the smile he gave me when he was tired. Not the soft one from Sunday mornings. This smile was younger, sharper. What was my husband? Elena did not look away. The numbers guy. My stomach turned. Of course he was. Caleb always understood risk. That was how he made people trust him. He could measure danger, price it, wrap it in clean language, and make it sound like responsibility. What happened? I asked. Elena folded her arms against the cold. 9 years ago, a vacant house burned. The official report said Derek broke in drunk, started the fire accidentally, and died inside. But you don't believe that? No. Because the house was supposed to burn. The alley seemed to narrow around us. Insurance payout, she said. Development pressure. Clear the property, collect the money, move forward. Tessa's voice was flat. And Derek became inconvenient? Elena nodded. Derek wanted out. He had recordings, names, payment records. He contacted me. And Caleb? Caleb called Derek the night of the fire. The restaurant came back to me so sharply I almost heard the clink of silverware. No matter what you hear, remember who I was with you. Not who I am, who I was. Elena handed me the flash drive. This has part of the recording Derek gave me. Not enough to convict anyone, enough to scare them. Why didn't you publish it? Her face changed. Not dramatically. Worse, quietly. Shame crossed it and disappeared so fast I almost missed it. Because 2 days after Derek died, someone broke into my apartment and left my cat in the freezer. I stopped breathing. Tessa went still beside me. Even the alley seemed to hold itself silent. Elena's voice hardened. I left reporting. I left Milwaukee. And last month, Caleb found me. He said the case was reopening. He said he wanted to make a deal. With the police? With whoever could give him immunity. Who? She looked toward the boarded hotel. I don't know. That was when a car turned into the alley. Black SUV. Slow. Too slow. Elena grabbed my arm. Move. The passenger window lowered. Tessa said something sharp and yanked me behind a dumpster just as glass shattered against the brick beside us. Not a gunshot. A bottle. For half a second, my brain did not understand it. Then the cloth inside caught air. Fire rolled across the alley floor, bright and hungry. The smell hit me first. Gasoline. For 1 second, all I could think was stupid and small. I had worn Caleb's sweatshirt to Milwaukee, and now it smelled like the thing that killed Derek Walsh. Tessa saved my life with a fire extinguisher from her trunk, and language so violent it probably needed its own court date. Elena stomped out the last burning strip of cloth with one boot, then grabbed my sleeve. Now do you believe me? I stared at the black scorch mark spreading across the alley pavement. Gasoline still burned in the back of my throat. I was leaning that way. The SUV was gone. Of course it was. Criminals never wait around long enough to provide license plates. Very inconsiderate, honestly. If someone is going to commit attempted murder, the least they can do is respect basic documentation. Tessa shoved the extinguisher back into her trunk, but her hands were shaking. I noticed. She saw me notice and glared like I had done something rude. We're going to the police, she said. Elena laughed, not loudly. Worse. Brokenly. Which police? Tessa pointed at her. I dislike cryptic women in coats. Elena, I said, still coughing a little. If Price is dirty, why did he come to me? Maybe he isn't dirty, she said. Maybe he's being watched. Maybe he's being used. Maybe he wants Caleb before someone else gets him. That was the problem with suspicion. Once it got inside your head, it did not sit politely in one chair. It ate the whole room. So we did not go to the precinct. We went to a diner near Lake Michigan instead, because Tessa said public places reduce murder by, at least, vibes, which was not a legal principle, but at that point I was accepting whatever structure the universe offered. Elena sat facing the door. Tessa sat beside me with the flash drive tucked under her thigh, like a very angry hen guarding an illegal egg. I ordered coffee and fries because apparently my body wanted the meal plan of a haunted trucker. Elena told us the rest in pieces. 9 years earlier, Derek Walsh had contacted her with proof that a property fire was being staged for insurance money and redevelopment pressure. It had happened before, she said. Smaller fires, empty buildings, clean payouts, the kind of fraud that wore a nice jacket and called itself urban improvement. But this house was different. Derek was scared. He said someone might get hurt. The house was supposed to be empty, Elena said. I already knew what was coming. I hated that. It wasn't, I said. Elena looked at me. Maribel Stone. Her eyes sharpened. You heard the name? Anonymous text. Elena looked down at her hands. Maribel was living in the basement, unhoused, former nurse from what I found later. She shouldn't have been there. She swallowed. But she was. The diner kept moving around us. Coffee poured, silverware clicked. Someone laughed near the counter like people were still allowed to have normal afternoons. And the official report? I asked. Never mentioned her. A dead woman erased so paperwork could look cleaner. I had seen files hide ugly things before. That was part of my job. Claims language could flatten a life until tragedy sounded like an inconvenience with a case number. But this was not a disputed claim. This was a woman, a person, turned into exposure. I looked at Elena. Did Caleb know she was inside? She did not answer. By then I hated silence so much I could have filed a formal complaint against it. Elena. I don't know what he knew before the fire, she said. I know what he knew after. What? He signed off on revised risk documentation for the development group. He helped bury it. Bury Maribel? Her face tightened. Bury the exposure. Exposure. Not Maribel. Not body. Not woman. Exposure. I pushed my fries away. They suddenly looked obscene sitting there, salted and normal. Tessa opened her laptop. Not her everyday laptop, naturally. A separate one she called clean, because apparently my best friend had levels of paranoia I used to tease her about, and now deeply respected. She plugged in Elena's flash drive. The file opened as an audio clip. For 1 second, none of us moved. Then Derek Walsh's voice crackled through the speakers. I'm not doing this anymore, Caleb. There was someone in there. Then Caleb. Younger. Sharper. Panicked. You don't know that. I saw her. A scrape. Heavy breathing. Then Caleb again. If you talk, both of us go down. The recording ended. No confession. No dramatic music. No perfect line that would make a courtroom gasp. Just enough. Enough to make my marriage feel like a crime scene with wedding photos. I sat back. My hands were cold. Elena watched me with something almost like pity, which irritated me because I had not given anyone permission to look at me like a broken lamp. That's why Caleb ran, she said. The case reopened. Ruth Walsh found something. Caleb wanted to trade the hard drive for protection. Ruth is Derek's sister? Yes, she disappeared after his funeral. People said grief took her. Elena looked toward the diner window. I think fear did. My phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Tessa snatched it before I could touch it. A photo appeared. Caleb's Audi burning at the edge of a dock. Then another, his wallet on wet pavement. Then a third. The necklace. The same tiny oval pendant Caleb had given me at dinner, lying in ash. For a moment I could not breathe. My hand went to my throat. Because I was wearing that necklace. I was wearing it. The pendant rested against my skin, warm and real, while its twin sat in a photograph covered in ash. Tessa saw my hand. Oh, she said quietly. Elena stood. No. The message beneath the photos read, he should have stayed missing. Tessa called Price before I could tell her not to. This time, he answered breathless. We found Caleb's vehicle, he said. I know, Tessa said. A pause. How? I took the phone from her. Someone wanted me to see it first. Price's voice dropped. Mara, listen to me. There's blood in the trunk. No body. We don't know if Caleb is dead or if he staged it. Across from me, Elena whispered. He staged it. I wanted to believe her. I wanted Caleb alive. Not because I forgave him. Not because love had suddenly become generous. Because alive meant answers. Alive meant I could look him in the face and ask what kind of man gives his wife a necklace while planning to make another one part of a crime scene. Then Price said, there's something else. My fingers tightened around the phone. What? The blood in the trunk isn't only Caleb's. The diner seemed to tilt. Tessa reached for my hand under the table. Price continued. We found a second blood profile. Female. Elena's face went white. For the first time since I met her, she did not look armored. She looked afraid. Not for the past, for herself. Detective Price insisted we come to the precinct. Elena refused. Tessa said everyone involved was terrible at planning, which was unfair, only because it was accurate. I sat in the diner booth staring at the photo of Caleb's burned Audi until the screen dimmed. My husband's car. My husband's wallet. My necklace lying in ash. blood in the trunk that might have been his, and might have belonged to the woman sitting across from me, looking like a ghost had just ordered black coffee. I looked at Elena. Could it be yours? She looked offended. Considering the circumstances, that was almost funny. I still have my blood. People keep surprising me today. Tessa took the phone from my hand before I could keep staring myself into uselessness. We need to think, she said. Caleb's car burns, no body. Female blood in the trunk, someone sends Mara photos before the police officially notify her. That means whoever sent them was close to the scene, got access from someone who was or helped stage it. Police, Elena said. Or firefighters, or the people who set it up. Don't be narrow. I'm anxious, not lazy. I looked out the diner window. Lake Michigan was gray and restless, like it had been asked to keep too many secrets and was finally getting irritated. Then I remembered the necklace. Wait, both women turned to me. Caleb gave me that necklace at dinner, I said, but the one in the car was found in ash. Tessa frowned. So I'm wearing mine. I reached into my sweater and pulled out the pendant. Gold, tiny oval, warm from my skin. For a second, none of us spoke. Elena leaned forward. He gave you a duplicate. My fingers tightened around the chain. Why? A romantic man gives a gift, a desperate man makes a symbol. A guilty man plants evidence. Tessa's phone buzzed. She opened a secure file from one of her contacts, someone helping her run partial data recovered from Caleb's burner. She stared at the screen. Oh, I hated oh. Nothing good arrives wearing that sound. What? I asked. The female blood from the trunk hasn't been officially identified yet, she said, but I cross-checked a partial medical ID from one recovered message, initials RW. Elena went still. Ruth Walsh. Derek's sister. The woman who had disappeared after his funeral. The woman who might have found the evidence Caleb wanted badly enough to burn his own car and put a fake version of my necklace in the ashes. I stood too fast and nearly knocked over the fries. We need to find Ruth. Elena shook her head. If Caleb has her. If Caleb has her, I said, then he's alive. Saying it out loud hurt, not because I wanted him dead, because I had spent hours grieving a man who might have been arranging the furniture inside his own disappearance. We left through the back of the diner after Tessa noticed a black SUV idling across the street. Maybe it was the same one from the alley. Maybe it was just an SUV. Maybe every dark vehicle in Milwaukee had become suspicious because my brain had started seeing danger with optional leather seats. Tessa drove while Elena directed us north toward the old neighborhood where Derek Walsh's mother had once lived. Ruth might have gone there if she was hurt. Or scared. Or desperate enough to trust a house with bad memories. The place was small and tired-looking, white paint peeling near the porch, one window boarded from the inside. A plastic angel leaned sideways in the dead flower bed like even faith had lost its balance. No car in the driveway. No lights, no movement. Elena knocked. Nothing. Tessa tried the side gate. Unlocked. This is how people get murdered, I whispered. Tessa glanced back. Technically, you're already in a murder-adjacent situation. Comforting. I'm not here for branding. In the backyard, a basement window was cracked open. Elena froze. What? I asked. She lifted one hand. Do you smell that? I did. Gasoline? Faint. Old. Not the sharp blast from the alley. This was quieter. Seeped in, waiting. Tessa called 911. I called Price. No answer. That scared me more than I wanted to admit. Then from inside the basement someone groaned. Not loud, not clear, but human. The three of us looked at one another. There are moments when your life pauses and gives you a choice you did not ask for. Be smart or be useful. Stay safe or move. I did the stupidest brave thing I had ever done. I pushed the window higher and called down, Ruth? A woman's voice rasped from the dark. Don't turn on the light. Tessa grabbed a flashlight and aimed it low toward the floor first, not the walls, not the switch. Ruth Walsh sat tied to a support beam. Blood had dried at her temple. One eye was swollen nearly shut. She was thin, maybe 40, with blunt-cut hair and a mouth pressed into a line so hard it looked like anger was the only thing keeping her upright. Even injured, she looked like someone who would survive out of spite. Elena climbed in first. Tessa followed. I stayed at the window, calling 911 again, because somebody had to be helpful without entering a basement that smelled like arson and terrible decisions. Ruth looked up when Elena reached her. You? Elena flinched. Then Ruth saw me. Her expression changed. You're Caleb's wife? Yes, she gave a dry, broken laugh. It sounded like sandpaper dragged across bone. He said you'd help him. My skin went cold. What? Ruth coughed as Tessa cut the zip ties with a pocket knife she had apparently been carrying, because of course she had. Tessa was basically disaster preparedness with eyeliner. Ruth's voice shook, but her eyes stayed sharp. He said you signed the new papers, said if I didn't give him the files, he'd make sure your name was on everything. The basement seemed to shrink around me. The walls, the window, the dark. Caleb had not just lied to me, he had not just hidden the past, he had prepared me. Not as his wife, as a shield. Sirens wailed somewhere far away. Ruth grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. Listen to me, she whispered. Caleb isn't running from them anymore. My throat tightened. Then who is he running from? She looked straight at me. You. Ruth Walsh refused the ambulance until she saw Detective Price. That created some tension, mostly because the paramedic looked like he had been awake since 1998 and did not appreciate hostage victims with scheduling preferences. Ruth sat on the back step wrapped in a gray blanket, holding a paper cup of water with both hands. Blood had dried near her temple. One eye was swollen almost shut. She did not cry. She watched everyone the way an injured animal watches a room full of people saying, "We're here to help." Detective Price arrived 12 minutes after the first patrol car. Elena stiffened when she saw him. So did Ruth. Interesting. Price looked at Ruth, then at me. You found her? Tessa found the basement window, I said. Tessa raised one hand. I accept snacks as recognition. Price ignored her, which was unfortunate. Tessa had earned snacks, possibly a medal, definitely fries. Ruth pointed at him with two shaking fingers. I talk with her present. Price's eyes moved to me. Mrs. Ellison is a civilian. Mara, Ruth said, is the only reason I'm not burning in that basement right now. No one had an immediate comeback. I admit I enjoyed that. Not the basement part. Obviously. The part where for once I was not being treated like a wife who needed to sit down and wait for men with badges, secrets, or both to decide how much truth I could handle. At the hospital, Ruth gave her statement with Price, another detective, and me in the room. Tessa waited outside, where she threatened a vending machine that had stolen $2 from her. Elena paced the hallway like guilt had grown legs and borrowed her shoes. Ruth sat upright in the bed, one hand against the bandage near her temple. Her voice was rough, but steady. Caleb contacted me 2 weeks ago. Price clicked his pen. You knew him before that? I knew of him. Ruth said, Derek talked about him before he died. The word died did something to the room. Not loudly, just enough to make the air heavier. Ruth continued. Derek hid files before the fire. He mailed a backup to an old family friend. That man passed last year. His daughter found the envelope in a storage locker and called me. What was in the files? Price asked. Insurance documents, payment records, call logs, photos before and after the fire. Proof the house wasn't cleared. My hands folded in my lap. Cleared. Such a clean word. Too clean. And Caleb wanted those files? Price asked. Ruth gave a dry laugh. He didn't want them, he needed them. For immunity? For leverage. She looked at me then. He said the case reopening made everyone nervous. Lyle, Rusk, Elena, her eyes held mine. And you. My stomach tightened. Me. My name did not belong in that sentence. It had no business standing beside developers, retired cops, hidden files, and a dead man from Milwaukee. But there it was anyway. Ruth said, Caleb told me if he controlled the files, he could make a deal. If he didn't, they would pin the whole fraud chain on him and whoever had signed his current disclosures. My signature flashed in my mind. Blue ink. Clean line. Obedient little trap. I dug my nails into my palm. What about Maribel Stone? Price asked. Ruth's face changed. Anger first, then grief. Derek saw her before the fire. He tried to call it off. They told him the house was empty. They told him he was drunk, but he saw her. He called Caleb, he told him. The room went still. Somewhere beyond the door, a hospital monitor beeped with steady, insulting calm. I looked at Ruth. Caleb knew? Ruth did not soften it. Yes, something inside me went quiet. Not numb. Worse, clear. Until that moment, love had been trying to negotiate in the background. Caleb was young. Caleb was scared. Caleb did not light the match. Caleb panicked. But knowing someone might be inside that house and helping clean the paperwork afterward was not panic. It was profit wearing a pressed shirt. Ruth said Caleb met her at the dock. He offered money first, then protection, then threats. He said you had already signed documents, she said to me. Said if I didn't give him the files, he could make the new investigation messy for both of you. I almost laughed. Messy. A drawer is messy. A sink full of dishes is messy. A husband tying your name to old blood is something else entirely. What happened at the car? Price asked. Ruth touched her bandage. He hit me with something. I woke up in the trunk. My stomach turned. He put you in the trunk? I asked. She nodded. I heard him on the phone. He said he needed it to look like whoever wanted him dead had taken me too. Then something went wrong. Another car came. Men argued. I heard a gunshot, maybe. Caleb pulled me out before the fire reached the trunk. Her mouth twisted. He kept saying, I'm not a murderer. Funny thing to say while tying someone up. No one spoke for a second. Even Tessa had stopped fighting the vending machine outside. Where did he take you? Price asked. The house. Did you see who helped him? One man, older, limp. Caleb called him Marty. Martin Rusk, retired cop. Price's jaw tightened. I looked at him. You knew Rusk? I knew of him. That answer did not satisfy anyone. Elena appeared in the doorway. I knew him too. Everyone turned. Her face was pale. He was my source 9 years ago. Ruth laughed once, sharp and ugly. You trusted the cop who buried my brother? Elena closed her eyes. That was when another layer peeled open. Elena had not stayed silent only because she was afraid. She had been used. Price asked her to sit. For once, Elena looked less armored. Smaller somehow. Like the woman under the red lipstick and green coat had finally run out of corners to hide in. Elena, Price said. What did Russ give you? She swallowed. A partial report. Enough to point at Derek. Enough to make me think he helped stage the fire and then got killed for talking. Ruth's voice went hard. Derek tried to stop it. I know that now. No, Ruth said. You knew what they wanted you to know. Elena flinched. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then Ruth turned back to me. Caleb has the hard drive. My heart knocked once. How? He said he got it before Price came to your condo. The hospital room disappeared for a second. I saw my kitchen, the warm coffee, the locked office door, the empty spot beside the lamp. Caleb had come home after dinner. He had taken the hard drive. He had made coffee. Then he left again before Detective Price arrived. He had been in my kitchen that morning while I slept. Maybe he had stood in the bedroom doorway. Maybe he had looked at me. Maybe he had decided I was easier to sacrifice if I stayed peaceful one more hour. The thought crawled over my skin. My husband had been close enough to wake me. And he chose not to say goodbye. Ruth reached into the hospital blanket and pulled out a folded receipt. He dropped this in the basement. Price took it carefully. A gas station receipt. Indiana. From that morning, Caleb was alive. And he was only 2 hours away. Caleb always said he hated Indiana. Too flat, he said. Too many billboards. Not enough decent coffee. So naturally, when my fugitive husband needed a place to hide, he picked a motel off I-94, wedged between a gas station and a pancake house with a sun-faded rooster on the sign. Men are mysterious creatures, mostly in disappointing ways. Detective Price did not want me anywhere near that motel. For once, this was one of his more reasonable opinions. I went anyway. Not alone. I was not that foolish. Grief may cause bad decisions, but I still believe in seatbelts, witnesses, and someone nearby who can call 911 while judging me silently. Price coordinated with Indiana police. Tessa came because she said someone needed to stop me from making eye contact with danger like it owed me money. Elena stayed behind to give a full statement. Ruth remained in the hospital with an officer outside her door. The plan was simple. Police would surround the motel. Price would call Caleb and try to draw him out. I would stay in the car. Plans are adorable. At 4:36 p.m. my phone rang. Caleb. His name appeared on the screen like a bruise that had learned how to light up. Everyone in the car went still. Price said, answer. Keep him talking. Tessa leaned close and whispered, do not improvise emotionally. I answered. Caleb. For 3 seconds there was only breathing, then his voice came through. Lara. I closed my eyes. One word. That was all it took for my body to betray me with memory. Sunday pancakes. His hand on my back in crowded elevators, the way he kissed my shoulder when he passed behind me in the kitchen. Memory is not loyal to truth, it is loyal to whatever hurt less. Where are you? I asked. You know where I am. I looked through the windshield at the motel. Room 12 had closed curtains. A vending machine hummed outside like it had no interest in federal crime. Why, Caleb? He let out a small sound, maybe a laugh, maybe exhaustion pretending to be one. That's too big a question. Start small, I said. Did you come home this morning? A pause. Yes. My throat tightened. I was asleep. I know. You made coffee. I needed to think. You stood in our kitchen, took the hard drive, left your ring and disappeared. I left the ring because I didn't deserve it. That made me angry. Not loud angry. Clean angry. You left the ring because it looked good for the story? Silence. Price nodded slightly from the front seat, urging me to keep going. Caleb said, I never wanted you involved. You had me sign liability documents. I was trying to protect our assets. I laughed once. Sharp, ugly. Caleb, I analyze insurance language for a living. Do not insult me with vocabulary. His voice cracked. I was scared. There it was, the favorite costume. Fear. I believe you, I said. I believe you were scared when Derek died. I believe you were scared when Elena started asking questions. I believe you were scared when Ruth found the files. I believe you were scared last night. He said nothing. But scared people still make choices. I didn't light the fire. Did you know Maribel Stone was inside? The line went silent. Outside room 12, the curtain shifted. Price touched his radio. Caleb, I said, slower this time. Did you know? When he answered, his voice was lower. I knew Derek said he saw someone. My hand tightened around the phone. And you still signed the revised risk documents. You don't understand what they would have done to me. To you? I was 28. So Maribel was old enough to die, but you were too young to tell the truth? Tessa's hand found my arm. Caleb breathed hard into the phone. I have the hard drive, he said. It clears parts of this. It proves Lyle and Russ ran it. And you? It proves I didn't kill Derek. That is not the same as innocent. The motel door opened. Caleb stepped out wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. He looked thinner than he had the night before. Pale, unshaven, alive. My heart did something stupid and painful. He looked straight toward our car. He knew I was there. Of course he knew. Caleb always understood where to place me in a scene. Mara, he said into the phone, come inside. 5 minutes. Let me show you what's on the drive. Then you decide. Price shook his head. I got out of the car. Tessa said a word my mother would have turned into a church prayer. Price hissed, Mara? But Caleb had already seen me. If I stayed back, he might run. If I went in, he might talk. And maybe some small broken part of me still needed to see whether the man I loved had a face left underneath all the lies. I walked toward him slowly, phone still in my hand, police hidden around the lot. Room 12 smelled like old carpet, bleach, and fear. Caleb closed the door behind us but did not lock it. Smart enough to look harmless. He set a black hard drive on the bed. There, he said, that's what everyone wants. I slipped my phone into my coat pocket. Still recording. You hurt Ruth, I said. I panicked. You put her in a trunk. I got her out. You want a medal for interrupting your own kidnapping? His face twisted. You don't know what it's like to have powerful people decide you're the easiest one to sacrifice. No, I said. I know what it's like to be married to the man who tried to sacrifice me first. He stepped closer. I loved you. Past tense. There it was. Small, cruel, almost gentle. I felt it like a blade sliding in slowly, because some wounds apparently prefer manners. I wiped my cheek, annoyed to find tears there. Grief has terrible timing and no respect for strategy. Did you love me, I asked, or did you love that I believed you? He looked at me. For once, no answer came quickly. Then he whispered, both. That hurt more than a cleaner lie would have. I nodded. Thank you. His eyes narrowed. For what? For finally saying something useful. The door burst open. Police flooded the room. Caleb reached for the hard drive. Price reached him first. They took him down on the ugly motel carpet while the vending machine hummed outside, still committed to snacks. Caleb looked at me from the floor. Mara, please. I stood there crying silently because grief is embarrassing and refuses to wait for privacy. Then I said the only thing left. You should have remembered who you were without me. Caleb was arrested in a motel room that smelled like bleach and bad decisions. That detail stayed with me. Not the handcuffs, not the officers, not even his face when he realized my phone had been recording. The smell. Bleach, stale carpet, gas station coffee, and fear that had been sprayed over with something cheap from a plastic bottle. The end of my marriage did not smell like roses or rain or dramatic piano music. It smelled like a room rented by the hour and a man who thought a hard drive could make him clean. It did not. The hard drive made him useful. That was different. Within 48 hours, federal investigators joined the case. Insurance fraud, obstruction, evidence tampering, kidnapping, assault, conspiracy. The list grew like mold in a room nobody wanted to open. Graham Lyle, the developer, was arrested 2 weeks later at O'Hare trying to board a flight to Zurich with 2 phones, 1 carry-on, and the confidence of a man who had never waited long enough at the DMV to learn humility. Martin Rusk, the retired cop, was arrested at his lake house. He had kept copies of altered reports in a safe behind a framed photo of himself receiving a community service award. When Detective Price told me that, I laughed. I probably should not have. But honestly, if corruption is going to be that obvious, it deserves audience feedback. Elena Voss gave a public statement 3 days later. She looked older on camera than she had in the alley. Less sharp. Less armored, more human. She admitted she had been afraid. She admitted she had trusted the wrong source. She admitted her silence had helped the wrong people stay safe. The internet was cruel to her for about 10 minutes, because the internet enjoys throwing rocks from couches. Then she published the full investigation, not for glory. For Maribel Stone. That was the name that changed everything. Maribel was not a female victim, not an unidentified person, not additional exposure. She was Maribel Ann Stone, 56 years old, former ER nurse, divorced, no children. A woman who had lost her apartment after medical debt swallowed what was left of her life. She had been sleeping in the basement of a vacant house because November in Milwaukee is not kind to people without locked doors. Derek Walsh tried to stop the fire when he realized she was there. He died too. For 9 years, one man was blamed, one woman was erased, and the people who made money called it risk. I used to think paperwork was boring. Now I know paperwork can bury a body without ever touching a shovel. Caleb's assets were frozen, so were parts of our accounts. For 3 months, my life became forms, statements, court dates, and lawyers who spoke in paragraphs no human should be forced to hear before coffee. The condo felt contaminated, not dirty. Worse, edited. Every room still held a version of Caleb. Caleb at the stove, Caleb on the couch, Caleb laughing in the hallway. Caleb making coffee the morning he chose to leave me sleeping while he stole the hard drive that could destroy us both. I sold the place in spring. The real estate agent said it had excellent light. I almost said, so did the interrogation room, but I was trying to become a healthier person. Slowly, with setbacks. Tessa helped me pack. She labeled one box Mara's very reasonable emotional collapse. Inside were blankets, old photos, 2 cracked picture frames, and the blue ceramic mug with the chipped handle. I kept the mug, not because I missed him, because I wanted proof. Not of Caleb. Of the morning I stopped letting his version of the world explain mine. Before I moved, Ruth asked me to come to Milwaukee. There was a memorial near Lake Michigan, small and windy, with maybe 30 people standing under a gray sky. Elena was there. Detective Price stood in the back. Tessa came too, wearing sunglasses even though there was no sun, because she said grief made her face unprofessional. A pastor said Maribel's name, then Derek's. Ruth held a framed photograph of her brother and cried without making a sound. I stood near the water with Caleb's necklace in my pocket. The duplicate, the pretty little oval pendant he had given me at dinner like a prayer, a warning or a prop. Maybe all 3. No matter what you hear, remember who I was with you. For a long time I did. That was the problem. I remembered only who he was with me. Not who he was when no one gentle was watching. After the memorial I walked down to the rocks. The lake moved hard against the shore, gray and restless. I took out the necklace and held it in my palm. Tessa stood behind me. You don't have to make this symbolic, she said. I know. Good. People in movies throw jewelry into water and then regret losing expensive metal. I looked back at her. She shrugged. I'm grieving responsibly. I smiled. Small. Real. Then I placed the necklace on a flat stone above the waterline. I did not throw it in. I did not need the lake to swallow it. I needed to leave it somewhere I could walk away from. 6 months later, I took a job with a nonprofit that investigated insurance abuse tied to housing fraud. The work was hard, ugly, necessary. On my first day, my supervisor handed me a case file and said, "Some of this may be emotionally difficult." I said, "That's fine. I've been married." She blinked. Then she laughed. So did I. It surprised me. My new apartment near Lincoln Park is smaller. The kitchen tile is ugly. The radiator clanks at night like a ghost with tools. I have one basil plant on the windowsill, that is, against all available evidence, still alive. Sometimes I wake before dawn and expect to hear Caleb grinding coffee. I don't. Sometimes I miss the man I thought I had. Then I remember Maribel, Ruth, Derek, Elena, and my own name on documents I did not understand, because love had made me lazy with danger. Healing did not arrive like forgiveness. It arrived like discipline. One truth at a time. One locked door opened. One lie named correctly. One morning when the coffee cooled and no one came back to explain it away. Caleb took a plea 18 months later. He testified against Lyle and Rusk. He cried in court when he apologized to me. I believed the tears. I did not believe they changed the dead. When I walked out of the courthouse, reporters shouted my name. I kept walking. For once, no one else got to decide what story I stood inside.